Welcome to Building Healthy Relationships, the 4 Habits podcast, helping you enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life. Here are your hosts, Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, recognized authorities on the subjects of improving work relationships and cultures, as well as couple and home relationships.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the next in the series of the 4 Habits podcast. You know, we have the joy of working and partnering with some great people. And today our guest is Kirsten Samuel, who we partner with. We're really excited about the conversation we're having today. Workplace well-being, the power of relationships. So welcome, Kirsten. Great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you, Jon and Andrea. It's my pleasure to be here. And I have to say that's the first time I've ever heard my full married name used.
Well, I noticed it's appearing on emails and so on, so I thought I'd give you your full title.
Thank you. That's news to me. Thank you.
Well, as Sam said, we do like to let our guests know just who we're talking to. So I'll give you a little bit of a bio on Kirsten, so you can know the person behind the lady that you hear or you see on your screens. So Kirsten Samuel. Kirsten is the CEO and founder of Kamwell, a B Corp certified multi-award winning employee well-being consultancy. Over the past decade, she has partnered with some of the world's largest organizations to create healthy, energized, and purpose-driven workplaces, and has witnessed firsthand the highs and lows encountered by organizations as they strive to integrate and embed well-being into their operations and culture. Her mission is to inspire and empower more people to take a human-centered approach to leading, working, and living. Now, when she's not working, Kirsten enjoys spending time with her family and friends, watching Formula One racing, eating out, karaoke with her team, live music, keeping fit, and occasionally training for the odd marathon.
Wow.
So as you can see, the queen of well-being herself right there.
Living it out, up to including doing marathons. And I love that line, the line about inspiring people to have a human-centered approach to what was it?
Leading, working, and living.
Working and living well. That just resonates so strongly. And, that explains why we get on so well in our partnership. But we'd love to know, what's the passion driving that focus? Where did that come from? This passion to have a human-centered approach to leading, working, and living.
That's a good question. And as you can tell from my bio, I'm a very multi-passionate individual. I think the passion started when I was actually in the corporate world, so 20 odd years ago. I'm very, very grateful for the knowledge, the experience, the foundations that I got working in the corporate sector and in the technology sector. The hustle and bustle of deal making, contract negotiations, working in big multi-faceted teams.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, ultimately, I felt that something was missing.
Right.
And when I really looked inwards, for me, that was very simply that I wasn't connecting to my purpose or to any sort of purpose, really. I was busy climbing the corporate ladder, but I wasn't quite sure where I was headed.
Yeah, climbing it because it was there rather than because it was getting you there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you can keep going. But for me, there's just always been something in me that has just felt that I needed to connect on a deeper level. So
Right.
I actually decided to leave and take some time out, took 6 months out to, go and do the cliched things, go and do a yoga retreat in India and spend some time traveling and just spend some time in my thoughts. And I think also coupled with that, certainly in the latter part of my journey through my corporate career, I'd started to see a lot of people that I liked, admired, respected starting to get burnout.
Right. And that's such a real thing, especially post-COVID. It's even more real now.
Absolutely. But even if you cast your mind back 15 years ago, there was a huge stigma around putting your hand up and saying you were struggling with stress, anxiety, burnout. People probably wouldn't have even known what that looked like at the times, let alone recognized those kind of signs in other people.
And we didn't have the language around it either to be able to say, this is what is happening to me.
Exactly.
We were talking just before we went live on air here, talking about sleep and the importance of that. And I just remember back to my banking days. This is going back a little bit more than 15 years ago now. But the conversation around sleep being for wimps and all that kind of stuff. You just work, let's go. Burnout was an absolute thing, with people just going fully for it, and that was the done thing.
Yeah, and nobody was talking about it as such.
Yeah. It was absolutely a badge of honor. I
Yeah,
remember
exactly.
back in those days, because I was very client facing, working with lots of senior executives, and part of my role was taking people out. So I'd finish work, 7 o'clock, then I'd be out wining and dining,
Mhm.
getting home on the very last train, and
Yep.
then back in the office at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that was great, because I enjoyed it. It was kind of it's your kind of first foray into that sort of world. But the
Yes,
problem is, it's not sustainable.
Absolutely.
correct. Yeah, and
So I think
sustainability.
exactly. So I think that was very much the mindset and the reality back then, and it's really encouraging to see how much we've moved on from that.
Yeah. So what's your passion now? What's the change that you want to see now?
Yeah. So my passion is really about, again, having seen having seen what stress and burnout looks like in the workplace. My passion now is very much around creating human-centered workplaces.
Hmm.
So if you can imagine walking into an office where you can see pods of teams working collaboratively, agilely together, there's like the hustle and bustle, there's great communication going on, there's just this kind of vibrancy in the office. And then if you imagine what it's like walking into an office where there's a row of empty desks where perhaps your top performers might used to have sat but have now
Yeah.
left the business, and no one's talking to each other. And there's, for me, it is so important that we get back to finding a way to bring our humanity into work. So for me, it's absolutely, my passion is around creating better workplace cultures.
And so what does that look like on the ground? If you were to, top level advise how to do it, what are the things that we're looking at to bring that alive?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for me, that looks like, first and foremost, trust.
Hmm.
Building cultures of trust, because for me that is absolutely foundational. And if you don't have trust, then you've got nothing to build on. So how do you do that? It's around open communication and transparency. It's around having mutual respect for your colleagues,
Mhm.
building community. Like, I see workplaces really as communities where communities full of good relationships.
You're absolutely talking our language. And this is such an important conversation because the world of work has changed and it's continuing to change. Some people still haven't gotten it yet, but this idea of command and control, really, it needs to give way to a lot more trust as people work flexibly and work from home more, or you have more flexible work arrangements. It has to be this centered on trust and respect for each other.
And I think there are so many other positive things. If you think about what does a great culture look like,
Mhm.
yes, trust and communication are absolutely foundational, as well as building good relationships, but you've got to have fun.
Yes.
Yep.
You want to have cultures where people can be innovative, where leaders and managers are really, really role modeling self-care. We talked about well-being before we started this
Mhm.
session. That's absolutely essential. And if you don't get that, I guess what's the opposite? You start to have negative, unmotivated employees. You have leaders and managers that can often be the problem. I've seen that in organizations. I've seen exemplary leaders and managers, but I've also seen leaders and managers that perpetuate this culture of stress and burnout and fear.
Yes.
And ultimately that results in unhealthy habits and team conflicts. And that's when it gets, that's when it all starts to unravel.
Exactly. And nobody wants to come into the office. It's if you can create the healthy culture, then people will want to be there and bring their positive energy to make work fun and make work work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you know this, but when you think about toxic cultures, and there's a lot of this that you can read about now. The recent stats are that if you have a toxic work culture, you're more than 10 times likely to lose employees,
Of course, yeah.
than you would based on compensation alone,
Wow.
Oh,
which I think is quite an interesting statistic. It might even be more than that now. And if you think about the last 2 years and all the all the talk around the Great Resignation, well, so much as that of that has been driven by a lack of inclusion, a lack of fairness, a lack of purpose in organizations.
for sure. And I think, as traumatic as the pandemic was, it certainly gave us all that moment of pause to reevaluate what's life about really and what do we really want out of life. And so the expectations of people going into workplaces now, they're much higher and much more human centered around flexibility and balance and being respected and being valued and having a place that you want to go to rather than a place that you have to go to.
Yes,
Yeah. And I'm just thinking
absolutely.
it's all about balance, isn't it? Because I mean, absolutely, we have to be real. There will be times when the pressure is on and we have to work long and we've just got to get the job done and get it
Yeah.
delivered and so on. But it's finding that balance. And okay, how do you then recover from that so that people can recover? So
Mm.
they can go again another time. But if you keep the foot on the accelerator at full pace all the while, it's just not sustainable.
What you said about leaders, I want to go back to that because that's another important point. Even if leaders themselves believe in more balance, the culture that they're in kind of pressures them into behaving in a certain way. So even though corporations now are making policies around being able to work more from home or
Mhm.
taking time off if you've worked extended hours or talking about the balance that you need, they're not, if the leaders aren't living it out, people will feel that people will believe what you do, not
Yeah.
what you say. What are you seeing where that's concerned in terms of policy versus the real freedom to live out that flexibility?
Seen a mix, to be honest.
Mm,
So I am seeing some. So I facilitated a panel a couple of days ago for a very excellent organisation,
hmm
and we had two of their senior leaders from HR and a very nice lady who runs one of their largest businesses, and they were exemplary.
Mm.
They really were, and you could really. I think what really stood out to me was the level of genuine care that they had for their people. And I think that really makes a difference. The
Yeah.
genuine interest and care that they had for their people, and how that has led to very trusting relationships
Mm.
where people feel empowered to do their best work, where they feel that they can authentically turn up as
mm.
themselves.
Mm.
And that's
And
something you can't fake.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what great really. Honestly, if I could have just bottled that conversation, uh, and by the way, one of the things that they said was that comes from the CEO.
Right.
It
There
comes
you
right
go.
up from the CEO, who is absolutely incredible. And I've seen what's happened to their EMPS score since she joined, and that just shows that actually, if you can believe it, live it, role model it, and how that can then filter down the system to your next level leaders and so on and so forth. It's then that you start to create that multiplier effect.
For
Yeah.
sure. That and it's such a powerful point because and that's the work that we do together, isn't it, where we're saying to leaders what you model has either a positive or a very negative impact on the culture of the workplace and how safe people feel to turn up as their
Yeah.
authentic self.
Yeah.
um what you mentioned relationships before.
No,
Did you have
go on. Well, I was just going to say, just picking up on that point there, just the importance of it all coming from the CEO. I mean, the reasons that some of these CEOs are paid the big bucks that they are paid when they're leading well. And we're in the UK here, and some of our listeners around the world will not be familiar with some of the stories that we're hearing here. But the post office has been in the very topical recently here in the UK. There are lots of questions around the leadership there in the time that they went through with the challenges that they've had with. The impact on lives basically
Mm.
across the nation. But just so important that the leadership leads by example. and sort of sets the message, sets the sail for the direction of travel for the organization.
And
Yeah.
I remember this story of a leader in the financial services industry, and it's always stuck with me. She said that on purpose, she gets into the office early, goes to the gym with her husband in the office gym, and then even though she could find a coffee shop somewhere far from where the business is, she goes to the coffee shop just across from where the offices are and sits with her husband, has a coffee, and does the crossword puzzle together.
Mm.
And she's doing that to model life and work and
That's
show that her husband's valuable, important to her, her exercise is important to her, and this is one way to make them work. And I just, this was years ago we had that conversation, and that just stuck with me, because by her modeling that, she's giving everybody around her permission to do the same.
And it's great to see some of those behaviours, and we're starting to see more of that. I try to do and live that out a lot with my team as well, in terms of giving them permission, because exactly as you say, as soon as they start to see in your diary that you're taking an hour off to go dancing or go to the gym or whatever it is you need to do for yourself,
Yes.
or that you've got your various doctor's appointments or personal appointments in there, it's that kind of silent nod.
Yes,
Yeah, it's okay. And by the way, you should be doing this too. Because
absolutely.
the reality is, it is just work and life. It's just one big
Yeah.
thing that we have to navigate carefully.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And I was just going to say, it's great to see it working when it's working well. But I'm guessing in the examples you worked with lots of organizations, both internally, but also now in your professional capacity, advising them on how to do well-being well. Clearly, without naming names, but I'm sure you've come across some situations where you just thought, "Oh my Lord, they haven't got this right. We need some big work to do here." Do you have any examples you can share of, situations you've seen where they're just not getting it right?
The
Things need to change.
challenge.
The challenge.
Yeah, we have seen that, to be fair, and I think it's realistic to say that where we are at now is very much a spectrum.
Yeah.
Mhm.
On one end, you've got your organisations that are trailblazing the way and really focused on culture and human-centered, well-being-centered leadership. And then on the other end, you've got organisations that are potentially at the start of that journey, but with intent to move further up. And then you've got some organisations, like you say, John, that are just not getting it right. It was now this goes back quite a few years, so I'm sure things have changed since then. But
We hope.
but an example that has stayed with me for a very long time was, we were doing some work with an organisation, and it was very early on when we were starting to talk about mental health, and we were doing some training, some mental health training for some of their colleagues, and it was a room, I can't even remember the location now, but it was a room in a fairly uninspiring building, and there was a 2-hour session going on that we were facilitating, and it was, again, if you think 10 years ago, this is big stuff. Nowadays, it's not a big thing to be running mental health training, but back then it really was. And,
Yeah, trailblazing.
absolutely, I really commend them for taking that opportunity. But I remember in the middle of that session, there was this knock on the door, and in walked, you could only assume was one of the managers or leaders of the business that just had that sort of air and grace about him. And he realised that it was a mental health session. And his response at the time was, "Oh, sorry, is this the room full of sick people?"
No.
Oh my goodness me.
Oh dear.
That's the other end of the scale.
Yeah.
How to kill a moment. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that they have learnt and that they have moved on from there. But that's the reality.
And that just gives the example that even if the very language, the words you use, how you describe things, can either lift the culture and say this is okay and give the space for people to be open about what's really going on, or it can shut that baby down where nobody talks about anything anymore.
And establish labels. Those people now carrying that label, that stigma of, oh, we're the sick people, and what do the colleagues make of that?
Yeah.
I know, it's yeah, as I say, I think we've moved beyond there as a society.
Yes, we have, because
there's still a lot of work to be done. But to answer your question again, Andrea, around what is the change that I'd like to see? I'd
Mhm.
like to see more workplace cultures that prioritize our humanity.
Yeah.
Because if we can't bring more of our humanity into work against the backdrop of everything that is going on in the world, a lot of us are going to get sick.
Yeah. Again.
So,
Yes.
so it's remembering that, and this isn't my phrase, but it's one that I heard that I love. But it's remembering that we are human beings and not human doings.
Yeah.
For sure, 100%. And what's really fascinating, I don't know if I mean, this is going off piste a little bit, but I'm watching with curiosity the next wave of culture now that AI is coming into the workplace.
Mm,
Because one thing it will force us to be, the distinguishing factor between jobs and AI will be the human centered approach. It's the humanity that we're now being challenged to bring back into the workplace, because that's the only thing that AI won't duplicate or replace.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on the impact of AI and how the invitation to be more human again.
That's it's a really interesting point, and I'm, amongst many things, a bit of a tech nerd. So I was using ChatGPT before most people even knew about it. I remember getting a message from a sort of friendship group that I was on about 6 months later saying, "What's ChatGPT?" And I was thinking, how do you not know about this? The way I've seen it deployed so far, and obviously we're still very early in that journey, has been quite positive, actually. I haven't heard or seen many instances where people feel that they're not getting that human interaction.
Mm.
I certainly don't think it replaces us. I think it can, if deployed correctly, can really complement some of the interactions and services that organisations can offer. Uh, you say, do you lose the human element? So there are some debates now that I think there was a report that I read that said, am I having an affair if I'm in an emotional relationship with my chatbot?
Oh boy.
Or is it
Interesting.
classed as infidelity? So
Uh-huh.
if you go to that extent where actually you're getting that connection and actually someone is properly actively listening to you, that's
Yeah.
one of your human partner, it does beg the question of actually how good is it going to get?
Yeah. I, I, I totally see that point, but I'm also hoping that as AI does more of the repetitive stuff, more of the things that, can routine and uh, the things that AI can replace, as AI replaces that, a wider space will be opened up for us to be more human, for us to be more creative, for us to be more connecting, for us to have the time to be rather than just do. And that will be the attractiveness about workplaces, because
Yeah.
people are being much more human
Mm.
again.
And and by that, we get to work on the stuff that we care about and the stuff that really matters.
Absolutely.
A lot of the automated processes. I think there's no doubt that there are some challenges and there are some threats around AI. Again, it's very much in its infancy. But I think from what I've seen so far, I've seen the benefits massively outweigh.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about it there on the fly as we speak, actually.
This is really going off piece in
Yeah,
every
really off piste,
direction.
but interesting. But what's really hitting me
Oh,
here is AI is well, the whole object of it is to give you a result that you're looking for. So you put a question out there and it comes back with an answer to that question. And I think the human aspect, as I think about it here, is just almost by definition, you don't always get the response that you're looking for. And humanity is all about responding to those unexpected inputs. So you put a question out there, you get an answer that's quite different, and now you've got to respond to that. Whereas with AI, it's just you put a question out, you get the answer back, and okay, this is all working, this is going my way, this is all feels good. And I
yeah.
think humanity is all about responding to those left field responses or those different responses. And maybe AI one day will give us those responses, and maybe that's it'll be trained to do that. But I think that's the bit that we still have over AI.
And I remember the days when computers were coming in, where
You're old enough to remember that.
I'm old enough to remember actually the punched cards and the big mainframes in air conditioned buildings. I go that far back. My kids ask where the dinosaurs are around there. Never mind that. Um, and I remember the furore, the fear, the excitement, just the anticipation of what will this mean for my life when computers were available to individuals and in homes. And we've settled into that, and we've found our place with that. And I anticipate the same thing will happen with AI. But I really believe that point you've been making about purpose and about connection, that will have to come into full focus as we embrace AI more and more in the workplace. So let's talk about relationships. What's the role of relationships in well-being? What's the power of relationships in workplace well-being?
I think relationships are just core to everything. So yeah, not only are they, I mean, we talk about trust and great culture and all of those kind of things, but as I said, workplaces are made up of relationships, communities with good, bad, in between relationships. So for me, relationships are absolutely foundational to everything that we do, both in and outside of work. And I think if you could have, obviously we all have lots of different muscles that we can exercise and learn, develop. But I think if there was only one muscle that you could develop and grow, it would be, for me, it would be the relational muscle. The root of everything. And I know I'm talking your language here.
Absolutely.
We're trying to sit on our hands to not steal your show and say yes, absolutely. But tell us why. Tell me why. What difference would that make?
I think you have to think about positive relationships. So, what are positive relationships? They are sources of energy, they are sources of innovation, collaboration, joy. You could even go as far as to say they're sources of high performance in workplaces. They are, for me, just, as I said, foundational to everything.
Yeah.
I think on the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got fractured relationships. And they can certainly be a source of frustration, conflict, anger, resentment, can leave you feeling hurt if someone has spoken to you impolitely.
Yep.
And some of these negative interactions, they might start as sort of low intensity incivility. I could be sarcastic to you, or I could start mocking you for something that you've said or the way you look. And I think the problem is that if that is left unchecked, that can lead to a lot more damaging interactions. And that's where you start to see things like workplace bullying, violence, aggression.
Yeah.
So for me, it's absolutely fundamental that we are all intentional in building our relationships with ourselves, with our colleagues, with our friends, with our family, with our children. It's absolutely core.
Yeah.
Absolutely well said. And our heart just leaps for joy when we hear that. And the question we always ask, you'd have heard us asking this, is why is it that we're not taught in any structured, consistent way to do relationships well? And even in the workplace, when we are taught to do relationships well, it's about the workplace.
Yeah.
It's not about who you become as a person. It's about how do we do this better in this context. And that's the doors that we keep pushing on to say, as you said, we're human beings. How do we become as individuals far more relationally intelligent in all our relationships, because that's who we are, not because that's how we need to perform in this particular context? Do you see, what do you notice in workplaces around, this investment in building strong relationships?
I think it's taken a while to get there. I think there's been more focus in workplaces on developing other skills. But 5 years ago, we started talking about, 5 years more, maybe 10, between 5 and 10 years ago, we started talking about emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And I think that, for me, certainly in my experience, was kind of the start of moving towards talking about relationships and how to build good ones. I think one of the problems just stems from the fact that we weren't taught this stuff from an early age.
Absolutely.
A bit like financial literacy. You know, at school you get a great education learning English, maths, geography, science, but actually some of the core fundamental things, like how to be a good human, how to talk to others, how to understand money, all of that sort of stuff, how to self-regulate, that stuff wasn't taught to us back
Yeah.
then. And
Yeah.
I think, again, schools are moving on now to really starting to look at some of this sort of stuff, which is great. But I think it wasn't ingrained in us from an early age. So now all we can be is really intentional about building that muscle
going forward.
I think historically feelings have always been left out. We stick to the stuff that we can control, we can manage, but feelings exactly, feelings. And this is really what it all comes down to. All the stuff you've been talking about just now is about how do you create an environment where people feel good in an organization. So talk about healthy relationships. What does that translate into? Well, it feels good. If it doesn't feel so good, the relationship is not a healthy one. It really comes down to feelings.
Emotions, emotional data. Go on,
Just
Kirsten.
bursting to say something. Go.
I've just scribbled on my notepad, feel good.
There you go.
Because knowledge, insight, facts, figures, that doesn't lead to action.
Yeah.
What leads to action are feelings.
Yeah.
For me, anyway, when you truly feel something, that's when you sit up and go, right, I'm going to change, or I'm going to do something about this.
Yeah. And you know that leads very neatly onto another digression, but I need to say that when we talk about inclusion, we talk about it as a thing, but inclusion is actually an emotion. It's that feeling of being trusted, respected, safe, able to turn up as your best self and bring all that energy inside you to create and innovate and do a great job where everybody wins.
And as you say, you feel like you belong.
You feel like you belong. It's the feeling. So, you know, we need to get more comfortable talking about emotions and feelings as valid data sources, as the data on the computer that, you know, we can justify. Because make no mistake, what actually happens is we make decisions emotionally but justify it logically. We can't tell you that. I can't tell you that I don't like working with you, but I'll tell you that I'm not available to work on the project. You know, it's that kind of thing going on. So how do we get better at that? So on that note, what's the kind of best relationship advice that you've had? What stands out for you?
Oh gosh, best relationship advice I have had.
Because that's how most people get advice. We don't, as you say, we're not being taught it formally in schools or what have you. So the people who do have good advice have picked it up from somewhere. Somebody, they've either read a book or a grandparent has said something or what have you. So any
or what's influenced your relationships?
Yeah, I think for me, so I guess I've picked up various things over the years, and I'm a huge advocate of investing in myself. And I strongly believe that the strength of your relationships start with the strength of the relationship that you have with yourself.
Yeah.
And if you get that right, and again, it's not like you get it right once and you're done.
Yeah.
We're around hopefully for a long time, and but I do believe it is the foundation of all of the other relationships that you can have in your life. And that's about, you know, trusting your own wisdom, trusting what you know to be right, treating yourself with love and respect and appreciating yourself, and also just having the self-confidence to lead yourself, to take charge of your life. There's a leadership mantra, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, you know, to take charge and to take care and to take charge. And I love that, because for me, it serves to remind me of the dual responsibilities you have as a leader, to look after the people around you, but also to be assertive and to make decisions. And sometimes they're hard decisions, but if you get the balance right between the two, that's a really good starting point.
Yes.
But I only have heard that term used in leadership. But for me, to take care and to take charge, also really, I feel that is like an individual mantra too. Because at the end of the day, you are in charge of your life. You're the one that there are many, if you're in the workplace, many organizations are offering wonderful benefits and wellbeing programs and training and things like this now, and that's great. But it's then up to you to take action and to take on board the opportunities that have been offered, just the same as it is that it's your responsibility to find your path, to forge your path, to look after yourself. So for me, like, what does that look like for me? I'm very conscious about looking after my mental and physical well-being. And I don't always get it right. My sleep is horrendous at the moment because I've got a 2-year-old that won't stay in his room.
It'll pass.
And that's me exercising because I'm knackered.
Yeah.
So, we don't always get it right, but it's knowing what your toolkit is and using it where it's appropriate. Like for me, I also love learning new things. Like growth is such a big part of my taking care of myself. So last year I became a Rubik's Cube nerd.
Oh,
is that right? Okay.
Oh, well done. Wow.
And this year I've got something else that I want to do. Professional skills, like how do you grow professionally? Like 6 months ago, I joined my local speakers club because I'm starting to have to do more keynotes for organizations. So really trying to learn some new strategies and become better at that. And taking care of yourself is also about treating yourself. Like I think there's so many people that I speak to and they haven't had a massage for a year, or they haven't done anything nice for themselves. They're always doing nice things for their colleagues and they're doing great work for their organizations and they've been a great family member and a great parent. But when did they actually last do something for themselves?
That's so powerful. And, the two lines that we often share that come to mind. One is you can't give what you don't have. So if you're not taking care of yourself and you're depleted on the inside, you can't give generously to those around you. And as a matter of fact, you might resent them when they go off and do it because you'll be saying, I don't get time to do that. Why do you do that? And the other thing is nobody can respect the boundaries that you don't set. So if you don't defend the time, knocking the microphone there. If you don't defend the time to do those things that refuel and re-energize you, people will just take over your time and take over your diary if you don't set those boundaries. So that's some really good insight on how to model well-being, which then gives other people permission to do it. Yeah,
well, just elevating care and that. I haven't heard that expression articulated as you did with take care and take charge. But it is really about the going back to the whole concept of the hard skills and the what used to be called the soft skills, or the hard skills and now the human skills, and finding that balance between the two. And I think in the past, the danger is leaders were all about taking charge. I'm a leader, I'm going to take charge. But if you do that without taking care, very quickly you won't be leading very much.
Yeah.
So the taking care has really come to the fore, and that's the clearly a core part of the work that you're doing in wellbeing space, just helping people take care.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Take care, take charge of your life and of your people.
Yeah.
And you only have one life.
Exactly. How are you going to get to live this?
Yeah, so you have to, this is going to sound a bit cheesy. You have to go out there, be brave, be bold, and most importantly, be real. And by that, I mean, it is safe now in this modern society to authentically be you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to not shut down parts of your soul that really bring you alive and allow you to be that creative, innovative, on fire person in the workplace. And we like to talk about how do you work well and be well at the same time. So what advice would you want to pass on to the next generation, your children, the next set of workers going into the workplace, those who will lead and those who will be employees? What's the message?
I think it's probably what I've just said, to be honest. It's safe to turn up as yourself. Look after yourself because you've only got one body, one mind. It's about giving yourself permission, being kind to yourself, and I'm just thinking because there's just something that I want to share with you that in terms of advice that was given to me recently.
Mhm.
And it was on this great discussion that I had with an organization. And one of the leaders that was on it said, always assume that 99% of people that you're dealing with are acting with what they believe to be the best of their intentions.
Mm-hmm.
That's really powerful.
And for me, that really, I've actually looked into that a little bit more since then. And I know that Brené Brown has talked a lot about that. Indra Nooyi, the former chairman and CEO of PepsiCo, has spoken about that in interviews. But when this lady mentioned it, it really, really spoke to me. Because I think if you can if you see the best in people, that's a good thing. And I think if you can approach any interaction with that in mind, you're more likely to approach it with kindness.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a nuance in what you said. Can you say that bit again? Because it's about the best intention with the information that they have, but you said it better.
Yeah, I said always assume that 99% of people are acting with what they believe to be their best intention.
What they believe to be the best intentions. Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah.
So, you do that, and you approach people more likely with more kindness
Mhm.
than assuming negative intent, and you start from a place of cynicism, anger. And what happens when you start to do that is that you start to create a positive feedback loop where you're believing that they're acting with their best intention. So you approach them with kindness. They see how you're responding to them, and they respond in a way that's positive as well.
For
So
sure.
I just really wanted to get that across because that was only a couple of days ago, and that has stayed with me. And all of my interactions since then, and it's so easy to, when you're busy, when you're tired, when you've got life pulling you in a million directions, to see someone's email to you or someone's phone call to you or text, whatever, as a negative.
Yes.
Yeah.
They might just be having a bad day too, because usually it's not about you, it's about them.
Absolutely.
But they believe they're acting with the best of intentions. I love that.
So yeah, if we can assume that, then we'll be in a lot better place. I remember on one of the workshops that we were doing, one of the managers said, the way I read an email depends on what's happened in my household that morning. So
true. Yeah.
it will either be seen as an attack or a warm message. If things were great in the morning, then she'll read it with the best of assumptions of the best of intentions. If things were fractious in the morning, it will seem like an attack on her as a person. So that is just so true, so powerful.
I think there's so much more that so much more that we could talk about. I wanted to circle back to the Rubik's Cube very quickly, though.
I know.
Did you manage to get your time down to a particular level? You're up against our son now. Our son, he picked us back up again at Christmas. I mean, I know there are people who do it in seconds. I think, was it either 1 minute or 2 minutes he managed to get it down to? Are you going for time, or are you just kind of just doing it?
Oh, I'm competitive through and through, so it's all about time for me. But in the holidays, we were in Portugal, and we were there for I think for just under 2 weeks, and every day I literally just spent time when I wasn't with the kids. It was just like trying to memorizing the algorithms, faster. And we'd go down to the pool after breakfast, and all the family would take a turn of trying to mess it up as much as they could. And someone was there with a stopwatch, and when I first started, I think I was about 5 minutes, and then I got down to just under 2 minutes, and I was
wow,
so proud of myself.
Yeah.
And this is a really funny story. I was honestly so chuffed with myself, and everyone just couldn't believe that I could actually do it, let alone do it that quickly. And so here I was, all chuffed with my new skill. And for me, it's just something I like to do in the mornings because it keeps my brain active and gets it firing up. And that week that we got back, we went to see my husband's best friend, a guy called Ed, out in St Albans. And we walked into their house, and my son said to me, Mummy, they've got loads of cubes. And I was thinking to myself, what is he talking about? And I realised that there were various Rubik's Cubes all around the house.
Oh, really?
Okay.
There I was thinking my under 2 minutes was a real accomplishment. And I found out that their oldest son was doing it in sub 20 seconds.
Oh, no way.
I know there are people out there like that.
Really catapulted me back down to reality. So my challenge for this 2024 is to see if I can become a speed cuber.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
But that's basically unlearning what you've learned and, learning a whole set of
It's
new
a whole different thing, yeah.
Well, listen, you are, I'm in awe of you with your sub 2 minutes. You're a hero in my book.
If anyone's got any tips, send them my way, please.
No, not at that level. No.
So my tip is when I get a Rubik's Cube, I hand it to my son. I don't even start. So you're miles ahead of me with that.
See, I knew there was something to unpack in there. Look at that. Just sensed. But Kirsten, it's been a real joy speaking with you. Maybe we'll have you come back again another time, and there's just so much more I'm sure that you have to share in this space. But I'm conscious of time.
Yes. And how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to talk about well-being in the workplace?
Sure. So probably 3 ways: through our website. I'm just going to spell it out. It's kamwell.com. So kamwell.com. Or you can drop me an email at hello@kamwell.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Fabulous.
And that's Kirsten Samuel, you won't find a Kirsten Samuel Hubert.
And we can put all that stuff in the show notes as well. So great.
Yeah, the link will be there.
It's been my great pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's been a joy chatting with you, and look forward maybe to the next time. Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, and you want to hear more, the best thing to do is subscribe. Then you'll never miss an episode. There's a new one every Friday. You can stay connected with us on social media at The 4 Habits for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to participate in discussions related to the show. We always love to hear from you. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on your preferred platform to allow us to reach more listeners and help people around the globe radically transform the way they do relationships so they too can enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life.